Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today, I am very excited to be sharing with you the beginning of a new Nicholas Offerman series, Nora S. Martin. This is chapter 1 of 5, and it's a one day represented in one book. So I think that's going to be the structure of this story, is that each chapter is one day, so a 5 day story. This book also has 13 pages of short stories. I'm always excited to get a new book by Nicholas Offerman. If you haven't seen his work, if you don't know who he is, please, please, please go watch the other videos I've done and the interview we did with him. I think Nicholas is like the most important comic artist working right now, or at least my favorite comic artist working right now that I just don't hear anybody talking about. And I think he's doing better stuff than almost anyone else out there. And this book is just a continuation of that. So please go learn about his work and the other things. The other videos that I have. The thing I will say about Nicholas's work that's hard to get across unless you actually just read it all is that even though like this story, Nora S. Martin, is going to be about Nora S. Martin, and it will be self-contained, and you can read these 5 issues and have a complete reading experience by a great cartoonist, a great writer, someone who really understands comics and how comics work. And you'll have a great 5 issue miniseries that you'll love. If you read the rest of Nicholas's work, you'll start realizing that, oh, hey, like this character that Nora ran into in the lunchroom in this scene, or like this guy that just comes by and is like yakking her ear off in the office that she's ignoring, who's just like a casual one-off joke to give a better sense of what her life's like, very potentially could have his own book. And that's how all of Nicholas's stories work. He's been doing this since 2011. He has over 2,000 pages of comics, and there are all these fantastically done self-contained stories that all link together as well. And you don't need to ever see the big picture, but it's a richer, bigger picture if you're there. So always excited, not only to get a new Nicholas Offerman book, but to get a new series from him, because it's like, oh, which character is it now? Whose story who used to be a background character that's now going to get fleshed out? So it's kind of like, who do I get to really meet now, you know? And that's I just love that about his work. It's completely influenced me and is going to influence pretty much everything I do coming forward. It really helped me understand how I could write what I want to write. So I got to give credit where credit's due. Like Nicholas has been very, very influential to me. You can see his artwork here has a really beautiful sense of design. His pages are always like flowy and lyrical. Wonderful sense of color throughout. Very, very strong cartooning, and cartooning that has its own voice. Like I would recognize the Nicholas Offerman drawing if I saw it. Very communicative, and it has its own extra little flair. It's not completely just functional. So everything about these books I love. The plot for this one is set up early on. There's going to be some really bad weather, and these characters don't want to come in. So Nora, the main character, and her work buddy set up that one of them is going to call out Friday and one of them is going to call out Saturday. They know they're not going to both be able to call out, so they're at least not going to have to deal. They're not going to both have to deal with Snowmageddon 2 days in a row. That's kind of one of the main plots setting up that five day structure of what's going on. Is like what's going to happen during this Snowmageddon. You see some of the just really fun play with design and composition and comics as like design and storytelling that Nick takes in the issue here. We're looking at like the app phone as panels, looking at all the information on the screen as kind of panel designed information. But you just have Nora going to buy movie tickets. I know Nick is a huge horror movie fan, so that makes sense. That shows up. He's really good also about letting characters spend time alone and letting the reader get to know the character without words. Just like, what do they do when they're alone? How do they move? And talking to him about his work, that's very important to him, and I think it shows a real sensitivity to character. So like when you glance at his work, it can almost feel like I don't know, like no one's talking for like 2 pages at a time. Like, what's going on? You really need that decompression. But I have found in reading Nick's work that his pacing is impeccable. You know, none of those moments are wasted. They're all totally necessary. In this page, you get in this spread, you get Nora coming home to her roommates, and one of them is Katie Kohler, who just had her series wrap up. And it's really cool to see Katie again, and that's another one of those examples of how these characters cycle in and out of each other's life. Nora is someone that you met as like Katie's roommate in just like a couple pages in the Katie Kohler, and then now anyone who's just reading the Nora S. Martin would meet Katie Kohler, and they not need to know anything about that other book, and she would just be an interesting backup character. Nick also knows the characters so well that you get a sense of who they are. Like, if this was the first Nick Offerman book that you read, you would get a sense of who Katie was, and then you'd be like, oh, okay, there's a series about her too. That's that kind of like obnoxious girl. So just one of the best writers I think that we've ever had in comics. Like, I'm trying not to be hyperbolic about Nicholas's work, but I really believe he's one of the. If we're talking about comics as literature, I don't think it gets any better than this kind of like ensemble cast, but where you're telling self-contained stories, but it's all bigger, and it feels like a whole world that is real. It exists somewhere. Some fun things too, like this character's got a Jimmy Eat World shirt on. Katie's definitely in a band and has her band shirt on. So you get those Easter eggs that they don't matter. You're not missing anything if you don't know them. But if you have been following all of Nicholas's work closely, like I do, then there's a lot of extra richness to be found in these. You'll see that even though Nicholas has a very stripped down cartooning style, he's never taking shortcuts. Like, he knows when to strip back and he knows when to lean in, and is totally willing to lean in. So just fantastic, as good as it gets cartooning. Some of the best writing I've ever read in comics ever. And yeah, just it's the most fascinating structure for an artist's production and career possible. And I really love this final page here. I don't feel bad about showing out the endings, because Nick told in the interview, he said that he doesn't mind spoilers in movies and stuff, because he feels like a well-told story, you should see the ending coming, because like it should be a natural consequence of who the characters are and things like that. I thought that was a really interesting idea on his part, and he surprises me quite a bit in his stories, so he doesn't actually write that way. But I love this last page, so I have to show it, where you have Nora going to sleep, and just taking the time to show like 2 panels just fucking around on your phone before you go to bed. That might feel like wasted storytelling. You could just go from here to here, but I think a lot of people do that, and probably do that for 30 minutes, an hour, so giving it some space is appropriate. And then ending on this just like abstract composition of the little black squiggles peeking out from the window when your story's about anticipating an oncoming snowmageddon. I really like that. Like, I'm going to bed, but da-da, and you get snow outside. So that's where it's like, that's not just writing, it's writing for comics and understanding what comics is all about. And then Nick also, because he's a maniac on top of working a full-time job and putting out 2,000 plus odd pages over 12 years, 13 years, he's also doing all these short stories that are connected to his worlds in larger ways. This one is not by Nick. I mean, it's obviously by Nick, but it's a book called Ghouls by Suspiria and D. Cipolle. I believe that this is actually by 2 characters, because there's a character named Susie in the book. So I think that's Suspiria, because Susie likes the movie Suspiria. And then this page also references The Fortunates Undone, and there's a character in one of Nick's storylines, one of his main characters, who is a comic artist who does The Unfortunates Undone. So I think this is him and his wife Susie, or his wife's sister, collaborating. I don't have it's hard to keep track of all of who's related to who. I'm sure Nick knows all that. So I think this is those 2 characters collaborating on a comic. And that's another really inspirational thing to me, where all of Nick's stories are very down-to-earth railroad stories, but because he has a character who does comics, because he has like a fictional movie series, he can do genre things and still be within the world that he's created. And I'm definitely stealing that strategy from him. I'm sorry, Nick. Then a story that's been playing out only in short stories in the back of other books is Bob's Long Night. This one is really hilarious. It's more of a comedic, like bombastic story than some of Nicholas's other things. This one, I think, right here also has an Easter egg to an older story where there's this strange part in the road in this part of the world where all these characters exist, mostly in New Jersey. Where it's a dangerous part on the road, and so the character almost gets in an accident, and he says, "What was that? Was it a deer?" And that references Nicholas's. I think it was his very first comic that he did at SVA. And then there's a one-page story here that's about a character from another book, the Sprinkles series, and so we check back in with that character. So that's another thing that's fun about Nick's work is like the Sprinkles stuff is like done. But if he has something to say, the part of his personality that lines up with this character, like this is just kind of an observation about the world that could be done in like a Dan Clowes, like where he's drawing himself kvetching, but he's able to put it into a character because that part of Nicholas's personality is being expressed through that character, and he can check back in with those characters and just do a one-page story. But if you follow his work, you know that character's personality and stuff, and so he can make an even greater point. You get like a little thing in here. He kind of tells you who he is. Some of the awards he's won. Nowhere near enough. He's nowhere near enough press or awards or attention. And then you can see all of the stories that he's done, and you can even see like the 2024 through 2028 plan. So Nicholas has these stories planned out, and he knows I'm going to accomplish this much in this amount of time. He's been doing this since 2001, so I can tell you there is 2,000 plus pages of amazing comics, amazing on every writing, art, everything. And they're waiting for you to read them. And this artist has been doing that consistently since 2011. So when they say that this is what's coming into 2028, you can believe that the prolific production and quality production will continue. Nicholas is an artist who keeps getting better too, so you're going to see improvement there. I will put a link to his Patreon down in the subscription below. The other cool thing about Nicholas's work is he's very modular about how you can buy it too. So you can go to his website and buy PDFs where you can get all 2,000 plus pages like all at once. He has collections that you can access where you can read it all digitally on Patreon. So, you don't need to have like $500 to go buy all of his books to get invested in the world. You could go buy Nora S. Martin and start buying the books, but then read all of the other material for like just $2 a month on his Patreon. And it's set up really nice and clean. So there's a bunch of different ways to get his work in your preferred format. You can read it by character. You can read it by when he made it. You can read it by the interior chronological nature of the story. So there's a bit of library science to being a fan of Nicholas's work, and he's into that as well. So it's there for the readers to kind of dip into how they please. I have found that you can pretty much just pick up any book and read that one and pick up any other in any order, and it will work perfectly fine. There's no entry or exit point. It's all perfect on its own, and it's all perfect together. So please, please, please go support this artist. I really believe this is one of the most important comic artists we've ever had, really, as a writer, someone who's really doing literature and art with comics. I just doesn't get better than this. This is everything I want out of comics. So please support Nicholas's work. House on Fire by Matt Battaglia is a just gorgeous book where Matt's kind of making an emotional response to the years of COVID and wrapping that into a sci-fi dystopian future that really the sci-fi dystopian's backgrounded, and you're focused on the emotional journey of two characters in a really beautiful way. And then that's enhanced by Matt's like really awesome, loose, kind of Paul Popish dry brush work. And then Sean and Matt have worked to get this second kind of orange spot color in there that's going to look really, really beautiful, and has allowed Matt to use his dry brush technique to add tone to the thing too. So with Sean's production technique, this is going to be a gorgeous book with a lot of heart.